Keeping that in mind, let's see what we can do with reading number 1, the ABCs of homeschooling. Group 1, somebody want to tell the class a little bit about what's going on here?
Okay, in this, what's this called?
Selection, yeah, passage, something like that, sure.
It talks about, Julia talks about how she has heard about homeschooling and how she was kind of unsure about it, but then through what she's been experiencing, it could be the more attractive option, as she said. And then it talks about how she went to the convention where basically like all the parents go to pick up the books, and it's kind of like an intro to it, and how it's like crazy, and there's like so many people doing it. It just kind of talks about like new experiences of homeschooling.
Excellent. And tell me, which of the 3 claims did you pick?
We did logos.
What is she trying to prove to the audience?
She's trying to prove that homeschooling isn't as simple and easy as it seems. She's like talking about how she's kind of flustered by seeing all the stuff.
Give me some evidence that she uses to support her conclusion that homeschooling is not as easy as it seems. And while you think about that, Priyanka, just for a moment, let me back up and sort of expand everything that I just said in that request. When you're dealing with logos, you must be able to find a conclusion, and that means a statement that the author wants to prove true or false. Here is Morse's conclusion according to Priyanka's group. Homeschooling is more difficult than it appears. You have to forgive the poor handwriting when I record. It makes everything a little bit jumpy. So this is she's trying to prove this true, correct? Okay, so Priyanka, how does she try to prove that?
Well, in the second paragraph, it talks about like my actual knowledge of homeschooling was rather limited, and she talks about what she thought it was like.
Mm-hmm.
And then that shows that she wasn't that like informed about it.
So is it the case that she uses a bit of a contrast strategy?
Yeah, and then it says that like she was like listing all the different like products and stuff you have to buy, and like the different courses that you have to teach your kids.
Right. I think what we've got is fiddle lessons, $600 microscopes, day-by-day lessons for kindergarten, because a lot of people probably wouldn't think, wait a minute, you need day-by-day lesson plans for kindergartners? Oh, absolutely. You know what, you can kind of flub by with high schoolers without having a lesson plan, but man, kindergartners, everything's got to be scheduled and on track. So she's kind of surprised by that. Sewing leagues, all sorts of different activities, and detail and detail and detail, which help lend support to the idea that this is difficult. In other words, evidence. She is providing evidence. This and this and this and this and this. Good. Ethos. You guys tend to stay away from ethos because it's more difficult, but I'll draw us there every once in a while. She used the word kids. What is the word kids used in this context? What type of language is it? Slang. Why is it slang? Proper word is children, and what does kids literally mean? Yeah, it's a baby goat. A kid is technically a baby goat. Yeah, so if you came up to a baby goat and said, hey kid, that would be correct. We actually pervert the word kid when we apply it to human children. Which is fine, right? We do this all the time. We talk about kids here, we talk about kids there. But what she's done is she's gone into an informal voice. What does she do for a living?
She writes articles.
She's a writer. She knows exactly what she's doing, and she knows very well that she used the word kid because it makes this less formal and makes her a little bit more approachable. She's a down-to-earth kind of person. We're much more likely to listen to her. She's in the first person, she's telling stories about herself, she's being honest, and she's using slang. She's not speaking like an idiot, but she is using slang. That makes her much more approachable. We're much more comfortable listening to her. We're much more likely to believe what she has to say. The ethos helps the conclusion in the logos also. We're much more likely to believe her on this if we like her. Now, speaking of language, number 2, talk to us about fluid dynamics.
Okay, so I'm saying like it's hard to like calculate linear.
Michael, you're giving yourself too big a task. Where do you think this passage comes from? This is a textbook passage on what? What general subject? Yeah, physics. That's it. Don't summarize it. Trust me, I don't understand it. I don't expect you to understand it. So there's no reason to try to summarize it. Just say it's a textbook passage on friction from a physics textbook. Excellent. Okay, so what do you folks want to explore with it?
Well, they're like trying to prove that like it's hard to calculate when something is linear or non-linear.
Okay. So this is logos. Hard to calculate. Okay? And can you give me a sentence that provides some evidence that helps me believe that it's hard to calculate?
That changeability makes non-linearity hard to calculate when on the state average of that behavior that never occurs in your system.
True, but that pretty much is the conclusion. So this is just this statement. I'm looking for evidence that supports that statement, not the statement itself.
Like the sentence with the hockey puck. I know
Would it be with the sentence without friction, where it starts without friction?
Without friction. Without friction, a simple linear equation expresses the amount of energy you need to accelerate the hockey puck. I think that's the easy part. I do know physics well enough to say that if friction isn't involved, the equation's simple. But once you throw friction in the mix, suddenly the equation becomes really complicated. And I think what we've got is us saying you cannot assign a constant importance to friction because its importance depends on speed. Speed, in turn, depends on friction. Does anybody see what that means? This whole thing is circular. You can't figure out speed without figuring out friction. You can't figure out friction without figuring out speed. This fact right here, and once again, it's just asserted evidence. This fact helps me believe that it is hard to calculate. So there's some logic there, once again, provided by evidence. Does he cite evidence, support it in any way? No, not necessarily, but textbooks usually don't. We sort of take them on their word. Is there a pathos claim going on here? No. In fact, if you want an example of a passage that totally removes all emotion whatsoever, here you go, talking about fluid dynamics. Which serves its purpose, right?